What up team, it is MurderInc here, back with another Shadow Legends video talking about the two boosted events. Now the first one is going to have ended by the time you're seeing this. It was for our friend Dryad here. Now with that being said, whether you got him or you didn't, that's going to be in the past. The next thing to talk about is what was activated today if you're watching this on release, which is going to be Nia. And the question is it worth your time to spend all of your void shards, if you have enough void shards of course, for a guaranteed white Dryad Nia? So one important thing to understand, first of all, before we get into this, is every single account's going to be different, has to be clarified because it's a very important point. You should never just go after a champion because it's considered very strong overall because of the fact I was just talking about, where every single account is going to be different. She could be useful and she could not be useful. Now the main draw for this champion, as overused as the term's going to be, is kind of like this champion's good because Faction Wars. Faction Wars is quite a while away. So with that being said, you're going to have to think for yourself, for the shards you've saved, is it worth spending 30 void shards right now to get this champion? And do you have these shards saved, or would you have to buy them? If you have to buy them, I think the answer is clearly going to be no. Again, of course, I'm not going to make decisions for anyone or their accounts here. So looking at white Dryad Nia's kit, it's not the worst thing, but it's definitely not an incredible or an amazing kit here. We do have decreased speed that can be helpful in quite a few places. We have an interesting A2 ability that I've gone over in previous videos where it gives you a heal. If the heal isn't used on this champion, it reduces the cooldown of all of the skills of the target you do heal by 2 turns. Very strong for sure. And then finally, ally protection and strengthen, the weak version of the strengthen of course, on all allies for 2 turns. So this is very strong, but it can have some side effects if you are looking at this champion for Faction Wars down the line. And finally, the passive here, whenever this champion's healed, heals each ally except this champion for 20% of that heal. So if you want to get down to things, if this champion has 100,000 health, which unless you have pretty decent gear, it's going to be hard to get 100,000 health on this champion, it's going to heal for 40,000. Of that 40,000, 20% of the 40,000 is that going to be spread to each individual ally. So as strong as this sounds, the number is rather quite low. So with that being said, I do want to talk about the synergy between the two guaranteed champions. If you did decide to go for Dryad, who I believe personally is the much stronger overall pick, if you did want to have like an ace in the hole for a guaranteed champion or Faction Wars. Now if you followed my previous advice, before I even get into this, you should already have 2 Mycelic Priest Orns. You would have this if you were electing to skip diffusion, because 2 of these guys are going to be insanely strong for Faction Wars. It's quite obvious. You can just look at the kit, look at the base stats, and 2 of these guys at level 50 are going to make your Faction Wars experience much smoother. Adding in an HP based epic champion like Dryad, also a separate affinity than Mycelic Priest Orn, is going to help things a lot more, but this is the main thing to consider. What Dryad the Runic does is he has a very strong shield buff, but he also increased the duration of buffs on all allies by 1 turn. Now if we head on over to Nia here and we look at her ally protection and strengthen, this can be problematic for players who don't have very good gear or stage 21 in Faction Wars, or pretty much any stage that has a hard-hitting champion. While ally protection is strong, it favors accounts that have much higher quality gear because all of the damage coming into all of the allies under the protection buff is focused on the white Dryad Nia champion. So if you are now extending that by utilizing the shield buff on Dryad, that's even more focused damage on white Dryad Nia. Now while we are going to get Righteous Revival, which can be used on herself, this is enough to be able to take damage for 1 or 2 turns, use this ability, heal back to full, then you're still going to have the remaining 3rd turn where she's going to take increased damage unless you elect not to use Dryad's A2, which I probably wouldn't do since it also has a shield, so there's a lot of benefits to using that for sure. So while this is very strong synergy for a strong account, I can also see the counter synergy point that players can run into because I've personally experienced this myself in other factions with using ally protection. So what did I do when I struggled with those factions? All I had to do was get rid of the ally protection champion or turn the skill off and everything worked fine. With that being said, is it worth using 30 void shards on a champion that you might have to turn off one of their strongest abilities to get them to work for the purpose you're intending them on? Now, I never use this rating system, pretty much for good reason, but if you are someone that looks at this frequently, I would probably recommend not doing that. I don't think to this day I've ever seen a champion that has actual proper ratings on all of this, because there's no real vetting behind who's doing this ratings. All you have to do is 6-star the champion and anyone can put a rating. It could be a troll, it could not be a troll, and it can heavily skew things, especially when there's so few people actually that do in fact have this champion. So do I believe any of these are accurate? I do not. Because of these 25, 23, or 27 people, how likely is it that their accounts are going to look similar to yours? Which I know is a point I keep talking about, but it's very important for players to understand. So as far as White Dryad Nia goes, I do not personally believe the 30 voids are going to be worth it as far as an investment, because void shards are rather hard to get. Unless you're buying a pack, you're not going to get them that easily. And if you do look at the void packs that are currently out here, the fact that you need 30, you're looking at a pretty hefty price tag no matter which pack you're looking at, because Plarium's very smart with how they market things. They're never going to give you a pack that equals 30 shards exactly. It's always going to be just under or just above. As we can see from this, it's going to be 28 shards if you buy 2 of these packs, which means you would fall too short unless you have some void shards saved up. But more so, back to my main point, this could definitely be better used during a 2x event, or you can simply just wait the very long duration we do have until Faction Wars comes out. It is likely we're going to have fusions that are going to be tied to the Sylvan Watchers, and when I do say likely, I'm pretty much 100% positive we're going to have 1 or 2 fusions for this faction specifically that have a very high chance of being useful in the Faction Wars setting, on top of, if you followed the plan already, with having 2 Mushroom Mans, and if you did fuse Dryad, that would cover your 5 champions already without needing Nia. So of course, that is just my personal advice. You are free to do as you would like. If you find places you can in fact use the White Dryad Nia in, absolutely go for it. I know she seems semi-popular in somewhere like the Hydra. Decreased speed of course is very strong. Also, the fact that she can reduce the cooldown of all of the skills by 2 turn on 1 target can be decently strong, but Hydra's been nerfed so many times. There is a massive amount of the current champions that are in this game that are very, very strong in the Hydra. So I would advise anyone considering pulling for this champion to really take a look at their account and consider the investment before pulling the trigger, because it's very easy to pull shards, and I guess I can kind of say waste shards on pulls due to events that you may think you need, but down the line you will realize you did not need. So with that being said, that's going to conclude this video in my personal opinion on how you should approach this current guaranteed void epic champion from the 30 void shards. Give me your thoughts and feedback. Did you fuse Dryad? Are you going to go ahead and aim for White Dryad Nia here? I'm curious on your takes. Where are you going to use them? Are you simply going to save them for the Faction Wars when they are released for the Sylvan Watchers? So keep me informed on that in the comments for sure. As always guys, if you enjoy this content, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I will see you all in my next upload.